Chapter 1. 143, 7th Year. Breakdown. Chapter 1. 144, 7th Year. Choices.
You fucking bastard!
Friday, March 24th, 1978, 0300 a.m. Remus rolled over again. He couldn't sleep. He was too hot with the duvet on, too cold if he pushed it off. His legs kept getting all tangled up in the bedsheets. His pillow had lumps in it, and somewhere in Gryffindor Tower a tap was dripping, which was driving him insane. On top of this, he just didn't feel tired.
Oi!
Sirius was on his feet at once. He sighed heavily and rolled over again. Beside him, Sirius groaned.
Moony, you are my best friend, and I would probably dive in front of a curse for you. But if you wake me up one more time, then I cannot be held responsible for my actions.
It's okay, Remus said, not sure who he was talking to, Sirius, who had leapt into defense mode, or Marlene, sobbing and red-faced and angry. He said this all without opening his eyes. Sorry.
Bastard!
Remus whispered. She said again defiantly, rubbing at her eyes.
Miss McKinnon.
I think it's the moon. I can't sleep. Madame Pumphrey appeared, looking uncharacteristically flustered. Sorry.
I will have you escorted out if you cannot be civil.
And you!
He got out of bed. It was no use keeping both of them up. Outside of the bed curtains, in the early morning gloom of their bedroom, Remus stood at the window for a while. It was a clear night, and the moon was almost full. Just one slither missing. He wondered if he had ever seen a full moon with his own human eyes. Perhaps he'd been too young to remember. Marlene turned on her.
You said you didn't know anything about it. You said you'd never worked with one before.
The forest beneath the moon was black with shadow, and it seemed unbelievable to Remus that in only a few hours he and his friends would be running through those dark, mysterious trees as if it was their own personal playground. Just now, it looked terrifying, a great black pit that could swallow you whole. Only 4 more moons at Hogwarts. And then what? Don't blame her, Marlene, please, Remus said, sitting down on the bed again, feeling a bit woozy. He put that thought away for another time. Remus looked at his own empty bed, unenthusiastically. The curtains hadn't been drawn over for weeks, because he never slept there, only used it for homework. As a consequence, it was covered with books, broken quills, chocolate wrappers, scrunched up balls of paper. Even if it had been tidy, the sheets looked somehow cold and uninviting in the moonlight. He'd have sighed again, but he didn't want to make any more noise. She was only trying to protect me. There were some biscuits in the common room, a tin of Garibaldi's from Mrs. Potter. If he took his book and his fags, he could have quite a pleasant few hours before he finally fell asleep, or it was time for breakfast. His stomach growled, and that was the decision made. He pulled on a pair of thick socks. They were Peter's, actually, but he never minded lending stuff like that too much. Picked up his wand and his book, and crept down to the common room, careful to step over the squeaky stair as he did.
How long?
Marlene spun around and glared at him again. As Remus pushed open the door to the common room, he realised too late that he was not alone. The fireplace was roaring, and the lamps around the couches glowing warmly. A figure was curled up on the largest red velvet settee, wrapped in a thick maroon blanket, with just a long black plait poking out of the top. In the armchair, clutching a mug of warm Ovaltine, staring fixedly at the fire, was Marlene. She looked up as he entered, and Remus had no choice but to smile affably and approach her. Since I was 5. As he neared, he could see that her eyes were dark and heavy, her cheeks red and tear-stained. Hi.
Bastard!
Marlene, please, he said, low, so as not to wake Yaz. She gave a small, faraway smile, unfurling slightly, wiping her cheeks. She flung a piece of parchment down on the bed. It was a letter, folded up and a bit dog-eared from all the fuss. Remus reached for it with shaking hands. Marlene stood there, stone-faced, waiting for him to read it. He unfolded it and looked down and tried his hardest. Most of the time now, he had no trouble at all reading, but he was still very tired and so nervous that all of a sudden he felt 11 years old again, the letters seeming to shift and change as he tried to make sense of them. Sorry.
Hi.
You okay? He shook his head. Sorry, I've got a headache. What does it... He stood just close enough. He didn't want to know the answer. He regretted everything, and wished with every fibre of his being that he was back in bed with Sirius, getting kicked in the shin every time he rolled over. Marlene shook her head mournfully, staring at the fire, her eyes filling up with tears. It was a familiar sight these days, and not just Marlene. Bad news was so common. Family members in hospital, or dead, or, worse than either, missing. Sirius took it from him, and in doing so, placed himself conspicuously between Remus and Marlene. He cleared his throat, frowning a bit.
I said he could get in touch through the fireplace if he wanted to talk tonight.
It's from Danny McKinnon. Bloody hell, Mooney. What have you done?
Please just tell me what it says.
She whispered, her voice hoarse as an old woman's. Remus shook his head, leaning forward and cradling his forehead in his hands. He really was getting a headache. Marlene was tapping her foot impatiently, and Madame Pomfrey was still hovering, obviously unsure whether or not to pull rank on this whole situation. Sirius scanned the page, much more comfortable with all the attention.
Danny, it's the full moon tomorrow. Well, tonight, I suppose.
She glanced at the grandfather clock.
He says, "Thank you."
He said,
Oh, is it?
Remus assumed as casual an air as possible.
What?
Remus looked up, squinting. Marlene nodded, still looking at the fire.
It has to be tonight, you see. He's going to the ministry tomorrow and they'll lock him up in the cells there. I wanted to go home for it, but he says there's nothing I can do.
Well, that's the gist.
Sirius replied, still reading.
I suppose there isn't.
Remus's stomach was clenching so hard he wanted to double over. He was so nervous and jittery already.
He received a letter when he arrived home this morning from one of Marlene's friends, who claims to be a werewolf. It had a lot of useful advice, and he'd like to meet you. He says he won't tell anybody, and he has no idea who you are anyway.
He'll be okay.
But I do!
Marlene said. She had stopped crying now, and her voice was a bit calmer, but Remus could feel the heat of emotion radiating from her. He tried, hoping he sounded kind.
He'll survive it!
Yes.
Remus nodded, his neck stiff. She said bitterly,
But I don't think he'll be okay. It takes a bit of you away every time. I've seen them at St. Mungo's, and he told me how it feels.
I knew you'd work it out.
And you sent the letter anyway?
Why?
I asked.
She faltered for a moment.
I wanted to help.
She shrugged.
Madame Pomfrey says I have a curious mind. That's why I'll be a good healer. I wanted to know so I could help. But he was so down after last month, so weak.
He shrugged. There was a long pause. Remus would have liked to lie down, but felt that it wouldn't be well received.
Dumbledore knows? And McGonagall?
I'm sure just being there for him helps.
Marlene was speaking much more quietly now, as if she could hardly believe it. Remus tried. Marlene wiped her eyes again with her sleeves.
Yes.
It just doesn't seem like enough. It's so dangerous.
She whispered. She sighed heavily, and her focus seemed to return a bit. She looked at him properly, for the first one.
Sorry, love. Is everything okay with you? What are you doing up? You could have killed someone.
No.
Oh, just couldn't sleep.
He raised his book to demonstrate. Sirius said, hands on his hips.
It's all been perfectly safe, ever since first year, hasn't it, Poppy? Remus would never hurt anyone.
Me neither. I knew Danny probably wouldn't try to get through, but I couldn't go to bed just in case. Poor Yaz tried her best.
She gave the girl sleeping on the couch an affectionate look.
Remus wouldn't.
Marlene met his eyes.
She's too good for me by half. But the wolf might.
Personally, I don't think anyone's good enough for you.
Remus said, though it wasn't him speaking, not really. They were Sirius's words. He'd noticed himself sounding more and more like Sirius and found he didn't mind it. Anyway, it made Marlene smile again.
I haven't. Not ever.
Lovely boy.
Remus felt the need to confirm.
We've done everything possible.
She said softly.
Sit down, eh? You're making me nervous hovering like that. Are you registered?
She snapped. He sat awkwardly on the sofa opposite Yaz. Marlene sat up, stretching, as though her back hurt. As she unfolded her legs from underneath her, a quill fell onto the floor.
Oops.
Well, almost everything possible.
He conceded. She leaned over to pick it up.
I was going to try and write him a letter. but I don't know what to say. And you just wanted to help Danny? You weren't trying to, I don't know, get him on side?
What side are you talking about, McKinnon?
She pulled the blank parchment out from the side of the armchair cushion. Sirius stepped forward. Threateningly, Remus sat stiffly with his book on his lap.
Is it really a cell they put him in? At the ministry?
Mooney's on our side. He's your friend.
He asked, unable to contain his grim curiosity. She stood up to stretch more and nodded.
I thought he was.
Marlene replied. She wasn't afraid of Sirius. She could best him on the Quidditch pitch any day, and Madame Pomfrey was standing right there.
Yeah, Mum said. He wouldn't tell me about it, which means it must be bad. Mum said it's better I don't know too much.
I had to keep it secret, Marlene.
Remus pleaded, the tension too unbearable. Remus kept with mouth shut, not trusting himself. Marlene tilted her head sympathetically.
I'm so sorry, Remus. I didn't even think. I feel awful whinging to you about this, given your situation.
I had to. Otherwise I could never have come to Hogwarts at all. You know what it's like when there's something different about you. You know what people are like.
He met her eye as he said this, and saw her turn cold with fear as it dawned on her exactly what he was alluding to.
What?
He stared up at her, his heart skipping a beat.
How dare you?
She said.
With your mum being in the hospital? How dare you?
Marlene replied, yawning, setting down the quill and parchment on the coffee table between them.
No wonder you can't sleep either.
No, I didn't mean.
He held his hands up, but it was too late.
Oh, yeah.
He willed himself to calm down.
Stay away from my family!
She snapped before turning on her heel and storming away in much the same way as she had arrived. Remus exhaled. He didn't really feel afraid, though he had no idea what Marlene planned to do next. He wondered vaguely if he could do his NEWT exams by correspondence, or if the Potters would let him stay at theirs without James or Sirius being there. But his head was too much of a muddle to make a proper plan, and he thought he'd rather just get some sleep while he could. He lay back down on the bed, Madame Pomfrey and Sirius watching him.
Yeah. It's okay, though. I understand.
Can I sit with you for a bit? You can read your book. I won't bother you.
I'm okay.
He said, she asked, biting her lip.
I just don't want to be the only one awake.
Honestly. Just going to have a little rest.
I'm going to speak to Professor McGonagall at once.
Yeah, of course.
To his surprise, she didn't sit back down, but came over to join him on the couch. She settled in, making herself comfortable, pulling a blanket up to her chin. He pretended to do the same, opening his book and leaning casually against the arm of the chair. Madame Pomfrey said finally,
Revision.
I think.
Remus said sleepily, closing his eyes. She asked, resting her cheek on his shoulder.
You might be better off talking to Marlene once she's calmed down. She respects your opinion. Don't get her in trouble. She hasn't done anything wrong. What else?
He replied. Madame Pomfrey gave him a very soft look then and came over to smooth his bedsheets a bit, touching his hand gently before leaving.
Hasn't done anything wrong.
Advanced arithmancy.
Oh, Remus.
Sirius muttered, scuffing his feet against the flagstone floor.
She's being a bigoted little cow.
She yawned again, her voice thick.
How fascinating.
It's not an uncommon point of view.
Remus sighed. She relaxed a bit and rested a hand on his knee. He gave it a quick squeeze for comfort.
You know me. I might as well get used to it sometime.
He said softly, joining in her sarcasm.
I ought to go and...
No. I live dangerously.
She gave a quiet chuckle, her eyes closing. He read and felt her heartbeat steady, her breathing even out, and in only a few minutes she was fast asleep, a dead weight curled up against him. He didn't mind. It was quite nice. Remus said sharply,
Leave her alone.
Remus stopped reading after Marlene had fallen asleep. He gently closed his book and just sat pondering for a while. He could smell the salt of her tears drying on her skin and the anxiety in her blood. And he couldn't get Danny out of his mind, in an imagined Ministry of Magic cell, probably underground, probably bare and dark and cold. The pain would be a real shock, if you'd never experienced it before, Remus thought. He could well imagine that the second full moon would feel even worse, because you'd know what was coming. No wonder Danny didn't want to talk about it.
But she's going to...
She's going to talk to her friends first.
If what Marlene said was true, then her brother had no one else to ask about it. No one to tell him that if you tried to fight the transformation, if you tried to brace yourself against it, then it only hurt more. That Murtlap essence was best for the initial cuts, but if you used Muggle disinfectant too, then the skin knit back together neater. Then there were the things that Remus wasn't sure if anyone knew, about the scent of magic, or how you could draw from it, how it made you stronger as long as you could channel it right, how being a werewolf meant lots of things, and not all of them were awful. No closer to sleep, Remus reached for the blank bit of parchment and began to write. Remus said, firmly,
Lily and Mary. I'd rather she talk to them. They're the best people in this situation.
Friday, March 24th, 1978, 5:30 p.m. He yawned.
Bloody hell, Mooney.
You don't have to walk me.
Sirius shook his head. Remus snapped irritably.
I know where the hospital wing is.
How can you be so calm? I know.
I'm knackered.
Remus replied, and it was the last thing he said for hours. Sirius replied, cheerfully, getting up anyway. James, Peter and Lily all looked down at their food. The thing was, whichever way it went, Remus couldn't see much of a future for himself at Hogwarts anyway. He was grateful, obviously, for everything Dumbledore, McGonagall and Madame Pomfrey had done for him. He'd loved every one of his subjects, except potions maybe, and above all he had a group of friends who were dearer to him than any family would ever be. But the good things would stay good, if he had to go. He might have more time to spend with Hope, more time to dedicate to winning this terrible war. Remus was no longer really learning anything at school that he hadn't already got from books. He yearned for practical experience. He wanted to be truly tested. You didn't need any WTs for that, just a well-stocked library and enough nerve. Remus had everything he needed now to do the thing he had wanted to do almost all his life.
You haven't finished your dinner.
Remus frowned. If Marlene got him dismissed from school, then Remus was finally free to seek out Greyback. The idea had been ticking away ever since he learnt the werewolf's name. And that night, he'd written to Danny, everything seemed very clear.
Nor have you.
That's because I don't want to puke all over myself when the crippling agony hits.
It was the thing he was born to do, almost as if he had inherited the task from Lyle. Gawky, insignificant, second-class Remus Lupin was never going to bring down anyone so insidiously terrible and all-powerful as Lord Voldemort, but the wolf in him knew he might have a chance at Fenrir Greyback. Remus knew it might kill him, but he was bloody well going to do some damage first. Remus muttered darkly. He'd said nothing to Sirius about this. As far as they'd come together, Remus was deeply ashamed of his own desire for revenge, his inability to tame that reckless rage. Sirius looked to him for self-control, for a reasonable, measured response, and Remus wasn't about to shatter that illusion and risk ruining everything that worked about their dynamic. Sirius glanced down at their friends, staring stalwartly at their empty plates.
Come on, Mooney. Let's go.
Anyway, Remus was 18 now, and Muggle or Wizard, he could make choices for himself, no matter how dangerous. And if it took upsetting Marlene to kick everything off, then at least he'd been able to help her brother in some small way. One of Matron's fatalistic catchphrases popped into his head, then, no good deed goes unpunished. Though what good deeds Matron had ever done, he didn't know, he said, a bit more gently. It was dinner time when he woke for the second time that day. Sirius wasn't there anymore, but the Marauders' map was tucked under Remus's pillow. He withdrew it and saw that the Marauders were all in the common room, Mary and Lily close by. There was a chicken pie on a plate by his bedside, magically kept warm somehow. Remus hadn't worked it out yet, maybe a charm on the plate. He decided he would eat before anything else and did so in silence, thinking at a mile a minute, as if his brain was making up for all the time he'd wasted sleeping. He scanned the map for Marlene. She was in the girls' dorm with Yaz. Remus shoved his hands deep in his robe pockets and strode quickly out of the great hall, forcing Sirius to jog slightly to keep up.
Hey!
He didn't know if that was good or bad. No angry mobs had come by brandishing pitchforks yet, which was probably a good sign. Madame Pomfrey came over just as he was finishing his second slice of millionaire shortbread. The thick, oozy caramel was very comforting.
How are you feeling, dear?
The dark-haired boy hurried after him. Remus didn't slow down until they were halfway to the hospital wing. She asked, deep frown lines in her face.
Fine.
Okay, I get it. You're in one of your dark moods.
Sirius puffed. he said brightly. He held out the plate to her.
Want one? I'll never eat them all. I'm always in a dark mood.
This was a lie, and they both knew it, but Madame Pomfrey was polite enough to go along with him. Remus tutted.
You ought to stop smoking. How are we going to beat Slytherin if you're so out of breath you can't keep up with me?
Well, as there's no one else on the ward today.
You can talk.
She smiled, sitting in the chair beside him and accepting a sweet. She conjured up 2 saucers, then poured steaming hot tea from her wand, and it was all very pleasant, but Remus could feel a big talk coming on.
I'll go after this.
Sirius straightened up.
This is the first time I've seen you without a fag in your mouth for weeks. Anyway, what's wrong?
He said.
Get out of your hair. Really? You have to ask.
Remus sped up again.
You're never any trouble, Remus.
She replied kindly, blowing on her tea to cool it.
Okay.
Sirius grabbed his arm to slow him down.
Even when you were a little boy.
I was a right little git in first year.
You're not sleeping, and you couldn't have dinner even though pudding was millionaire shortbread, which is your favorite. Fair enough. I'd be grumpy too.
Remus countered. She smiled and shook her head.
I'm not grumpy.
Remus objected.
Not at all. A diamond in the rough.
Oh.
Touchy then.
Fuck off.
He said, feeling himself heat up. Anyone else he'd have told to shut up or piss off, but he would never ever have a rude word to say to Madame Pomfrey.
It's flown by, the last few years.
Remus practically growled.
Leave me alone if you're going to be an arse.
She sighed.
I remember that little scrap of a thing you were. All eyes and elbows. You've grown into a fine young man.
I'm just trying to keep things in perspective.
You don't understand.
He wished she'd stop. As nice as all of this was, he didn't know what to do with it.
And you deserve every success, Remus. Do you hear me?
Make me understand.
They were nearish the hospital wing now, and everyone was at dinner, so the corridor was empty, which was lucky because Remus didn't check before he completely lost his rag. She continued.
Make you understand?
It's not going to be easy for you after school, and I know you know that.
He nodded. He raved.
I'll be okay. Fucking hell. Okay, go on then. Understand that I'm climbing the bloody walls with worrying and stressing and... It's NEWTs and the bloody moon and my fucking mother crying because I can't see her tomorrow because my fucking dad couldn't control his fucking temper and now I'm... And Marlene crying over her brother, which wasn't even my fucking fault. But it bloody well feels like it. And school's nearly finished. And there's a war on. And a Quidditch match. And this big prank. And my hip hurts. And I'm just tired. And I really, really wanted pudding.
He felt foolish once it was over, but a bit better too. Like there had been a balloon inflating in his chest all this time, and it had finally popped, giving him space to breathe again. He stood there, glaring at Sirius, waiting for a reaction.
You will.
She smiled, her eyes brightening with tears.
My goodness.
The portrait across from them said. She was a very stern-looking witch, seated in a high-backed wooden chair.
And if you ever need anything, you know where to reach me.
Of course.
I've never heard such disgusting language.
Oh, piss off, you daft old trollop.
I knew Danny McKinnon, you know.
She said, clearing her throat. Here it comes, Remus thought. But she'd cunningly overpowered him with all that nice stuff, and he just had to grit his teeth and listen now. Sirius shot at her, in a very good imitation of Remus. He looked at Remus again, and his face cracked into a smile.
You want to sit down for a bit? I think that's the most you've ever said in one go.
Yeah?
Remus exhaled and smiled weakly back. He said casually, taking another slice of cake.
Yes, when he was a student here. Had him in here 100 times for patching up. He was Gryffindor beater, like Marlene. He was a bit more outgoing than she is.
Sorry. I don't know.
For what? Come on, Madame Pomfrey will be having kittens.
They carried on their way, and the air was cleared, and nothing seemed quite so grim. Still, Remus hated Sirius having to go, knowing that the next time they'd see each other, neither of them would be quite themselves. Remus returned dryly.
She's hardly a shrinking violet.
So, the way I see it,
Sirius said, still cheerful, after all that. Madame Pomfrey smirked, despite herself.
No, quite. She has that McKinnon tenacity and a keen sense of right and wrong.
If I run back to the hall as fast as I can get the last of the millionaire shortbread and wrap it up for you to have for breakfast. Anything else I can do to help?
You're such a wanker sometimes. She does.
He sighed. He'd always liked that about Marlene, her straightforwardness.
Yep.
Actually, there is something, and I know what you're going to say, that everything isn't that simple, that there are shades of grey, and that it doesn't matter what people think about you. It matters what you do.
Anything.
Well, yes.
I know all that, and it's fine. I knew all that when I wrote to Danny. I even know how Marlene would react. But in the end, it didn't matter. The only thing that mattered was helping him. Could you post this for me?
I'm proud of you, Remus.
Remus handed him a sealed envelope. Sirius took it, looking down with a frown.
Are you sure?
That threw him for a loop. His throat constricted, and he almost choked trying to swallow the last of his slice, the sugar turning to acid on its way down. He spluttered and coughed, reaching for the tea to wash it down. Madame Pomfrey got up, smiling. She patted him on the shoulder as he recovered.
I'll let you get on.
No, but it's the right thing to do.
Okay, I'll do it right now.
He took a few moments to compose himself before getting up. He brushed the crumbs from the sheets and made the bed, though he knew he didn't really need to. The rest of the sweets he wrapped up into some parchment and carefully slid the package into his bag. He might need them later. Remus was almost surprised by how calm he felt. There was a sense of closing, of coming to an inevitable end. Someone was always going to find out, he told himself. He'd have been an idiot to think they could all hide such a big thing forever. They'd done a bloody good job, but it had all been luck, and they'd taken so many risks. At least this way, it had been Remus's choice. He'd controlled it as much as he could. This way, the marauders were safe too. No one would know what they'd all been up to every full moon.
Thank you.
Anything for our moon.
He made his way slowly back to Gryffindor Tower. He was all stiff from sleeping all day, and was grateful for the opportunity to stretch his legs in privacy. Sirius hadn't mentioned the hip problem for a while, but Remus saw him purse his lips, or frown whenever he noticed Remus limping or rubbing his side.
Blatherskite.
Remus shut him up with a kiss. He said to the fat lady, who barely looked up from filing her fingernails to let him through. He entered the room and felt 6 pairs of eyes on him at once. Steeling himself and pasting on a careless smile, he approached his friends, sitting in their usual place, taking up 2 sofas and an armchair. Saturday, March 25th, 1978.
Moony!
Sirius got up from where he'd been sprawling to make room. The transformation hadn't been as bad as he'd expected. Maybe because nothing can ever be that bad when you truly expect the worst. And the night itself was wonderful. He had run and run and run until Prongs and Wormtail were lost, miles behind them, and it was just the wolf and the dog snapping at each other playfully, goading each other on. In the morning, once Remus had writhed and twisted back into his human body, he felt as though his bones were made of cooked spaghetti. He was so exhausted. He stumbled back to the hospital wing with Madame Pomfrey, half asleep, and was grateful to collapse into his favourite bed by the far window and sleep the whole morning away. It was blissful to not be worrying, not fidgeting or clenching his jaw or looking for a distraction.
I was just going to come up and see if you were awake.
I'm awake.
It was late afternoon before Marlene finally heard about the letter. The noise of her arguing with Madame Pomfrey woke Remus. He jolted awake, heart beating faster at the sound of raised voices. The first thing he saw was Sirius, fast asleep in the chair next to him, arms folded across his chest, head lolling, feet propped up on the edge of the hospital bed frame. There was a plate of at least 20 millionaire shortcakes on the bedside table, he said redundantly, taking his seat.
Sirius told us what you did.
Sirius's eyes snapped open a few seconds after Remus, and he blinked, surprised, and frowned.
Is that McKinnon?
Peter said, as if he couldn't contain himself. He was fiddling with a chess piece. There was a game going on, but Remus couldn't tell who Peter was playing.
Good.
Let me see him, Poppy.
Miss McKinnon, I absolutely will not have this.
Remus nodded.
Anyone spoken to Marlene?
I know he's here.
We got yelled at.
I shall call Professor McGonagall.
Remus! Remus Lupin!
Mary sighed, indicating herself and Lily.
I'm here, Marlene.
I think she's mostly hurt that she was the last to find out.
Remus began to get out of bed, ready to face the music. If it was all over, he'd still made it 7 years. he was still legally allowed to perform magic, even if he did get exposed.
It's okay, Madame Pomfrey.
She's not said much else, though. Been locked away with Yaz.
Right.
He called, as Marlene came clattering across the ward, yanking back the screen which hid him.
Is it true?
Listen, Mooney.
James leaned over, eyes very serious. Her hair flew about her face as she stormed in, her eyes wide and wild. She stared at him, and Remus knew she was really seeing him for the first time, analysing, a natural healer. Marlene looked at the bed and Sirius and Remus's scars and battered frame, and he knew she was remembering every time he had been tired or missed a lesson or had a new scratch. The light of truth flashed her eyes, and she burst into tears.
We've been talking, and remember 5th year. Dumbledore stopped Snape from telling everyone. He can stop Marlene too, if it comes to that.
He might.
You fucking bastard!
Remus nodded, though he wasn't so sure. He might serve Dumbledore better out of school now than he could have at 16, especially considering the contacts Remus had already made.
But leave him out of it for now, okay?
Why did you do it?
Peter asked, still clutching the chess piece.
To help Danny.
Remus replied, surprised. He looked at all of them.
He was alone. No one was helping him. Marlene told me that herself.
But Remus,
Lily said.
you knew how she would feel about it. You knew she wouldn't understand.
I knew that. But it was for Danny.
Remus repeated firmly. They all promised to give it time and see what Marlene decided to do next. Lily and Mary vowed that they would do everything they could. That night in their dorm, they would explain, try to convince her. Remus thanked them because he knew how much they cared about him. They had a quiet evening. Remus played chess with Peter and lost, then Sirius took over and they tied. James and Lily quizzed each other on potion ingredients, and Mary half-heartedly worked on job applications.
Half-boring Muggle secretarial stuff to please Mum, and half-boring Ministry of Magic stuff to please McGonagall.
She sighed. Eventually they went to bed, one by one, and though Remus had barely been awake for 3 hours that day, he climbed the stairs yawning. Sirius had been very patient. He hadn't said so much as a word yet, and Remus knew how difficult that must be for him. So when they were finally in bed, and as alone as they could ever be at Hogwarts, he lay quietly on his back and stares up at the velvet hangings and let Sirius speak.
I won't let her do this.
Sirius whispered into his ear, reaching for his hand.
I'll talk to her. Mary and Lily'll talk to her, and we'll make her understand. McGonagall and Madame Pomfrey, they'll want to help you. She'll listen to them if she won't listen to her friends. Or Dumbledore. James could kick her off the team, anything. We won't lose you, Mooney. You've worked too hard. You're not getting kicked out just for trying to be nice to that ungrateful, stuck-up, intolerant.
It's going to be okay, Padfoot,
Remus said.
Exactly.
Sirius nodded, his hair rustling against the pillow.
Exactly, because we're going to stop her.
No, I mean, it doesn't matter what happens. It's going to be okay. If I leave in 3 months or I have to go tomorrow, everything will still be okay.
But your NEWTs.
Well, I was looking forward to completely destroying you in history and charms.
And arithmancy. I've been copying off you all year.
And arithmancy.
Remus laughed.
But, well, the NEWTs don't mean much. I still won't be able to enter any of the ministry training programs without registering as a werewolf. And I'm not going to do that. Not ever. I don't know if I even really want to do that sort of job. What I want is to start changing things. That's why I wrote to Danny in the first place.
You mean you want to get kicked out?
I don't think it will come to that. I don't think Marlene would, even if she's angry. But she might ask me to leave, and if it's what she wants, then I will.
And join the war.
Sirius finished. His voice sounded strange. Not bad, but Remus knew he understood.
Yes, I suppose you could put it that way.
Remus nodded.
I'll come with you then. I don't need NEWTs either. I'm a black.
I wouldn't ask you to do that.
I know, but I will. We'll go together.
Remus didn't want to admit it, but he was quietly thrilled. Perhaps it was the Gryffindor part of him, but leaving childhood behind and rushing head first into the unknown with his best friend sounded so gloriously tempting. It would be the making of them. away from Hogwarts and schedules and all of the silly little feuds and rivalries there. They had so much to offer, he knew it. Hadn't they triumphed in everything they'd ever attempted? Weren't they the heroes of every story so far? It would be nothing at all to them. They could end this war and really begin their lives.
Thank you.
He rolled over to kiss Sirius. He kissed his lips, and his hand slid under his nightshirt, and he kept kissing him, his lips, his neck, his jaw.
Thank you, thank you.